On today's show, we break down the NBA trade deadline and talk about who made the most consequential trades and who made the best trades. Plus, we're going to go line by line and talk about all of them. We also have a couple games to hit. This is Friday edition of the All NBA Show. What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA Show, powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/AllNBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Jason Tim, from over at the Volume Hoops Tonight. What's going on, JT? Did you enjoy the trade deadline? Was it everything you hoped it would be?
First of all, it's good to see you, buddy. It's been a little bit of a crazy week. The way that the deadline was kind of spaced out, it felt like it just kept coming in waves. Like there was like a morning wave and an afternoon wave every day. And we ended up doing 8 recordings at Hoops Tonight. That's how crazy the week was. But I will say this was my 5th trade deadline since I started covering the league. And I think this was the weirdest. I don't think anything will ever top the Luka Doncic trade in terms of like one big splashy trade. But this was so many strange moves that kind of came out of left field.
There are some that are hard to believe. I saw a theory because the trade deadline, usually it's like you go all the way up to the last hour and then they just start coming in. Because of last year's Lakers deal with Mark Williams getting rescinded because of the not failing the physical, that's why so many deals were early. I think that theory tracks because a lot of the deals happen basically 24 hours before the deadline, all the way up till 2 hours before the deadline. And the last hour was kind of quiet. So I kind of think that theory tracks.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think also it kind of felt like a lot of these deals were either in the works or kind of more or less moving in that direction for a long time leading up to it. Like they were all just such like franchise altering moves. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't, we had the occasional like Ayo Dosunmu to the Wolves or I think Jared McCain to the Thunder kind of fall into this role of like the typical deadline, like contender makes a move on the margins to try to go up a level. But so many of these like fundamental franchise altering moves, like the Cavs and Clippers swapping guards or the Jazz going all in on Keontae George, who I actually really like and I think is fun, and we're going to get into it, I'm sure. But like, yeah, those kinds of franchise-altering moves, I'm sure didn't happen over the course of an hour, but more over weeks and discussions with the front office about the direction that they're going as teams. And so I think that was I think it was a combination of those two things, like real franchise-altering moves, and then, trying to protect yourself against physical issues.
Yeah, and then as Steven Whiters points out here, there was a lot of salary dumping. I mean, I don't know how many salary dumping moves there were. It was like 8 of them right at the last second for teams to get just below the tax. And
that's the new NBA now. Like, it's so much of it is about managing money with these apron rules.
Yeah, and a lot of teams did it. So we probably won't break down all of those per se, but there are some consequential ones. I don't know if we'll go into the Hunter Tyson.
Baji salary dumping, Chris Paul gets moved and then bought out trade. You don't want to get into that one?
See, Abaji is like interesting to me because I haven't, there's something there for him. So there's like an interesting thing, I think, but we won't even get into him. I think he's below the line of what we're going to talk about today because there's like 10 trades. There honestly are 10 trades that I think make a difference. I rank them in order of how important I think they are, but we're going to start real quick just because I always want us to touch on the games, the actual games that are being played, even if we're not going to break them down. Let's just go quickly through the slate last night. And what stands out to me, the Detroit Pistons have I was looking through their schedule for the year. I think this is their second like bad loss as they fall at home to the Wizards 126-117. They lost to the Utah Jazz in December, the day after Christmas. That one's pretty bad. They also lost to Dallas. If you recall, Dallas had like a weird run in them at that exact point in time, and it was capped by that. So I don't even know if I'll call that one a bad one. But losing to the Wizards is certainly weird, certainly a strange one.
Yeah, it ended up being the bench scoring, Sharif Cooper and Will Riley. Will Riley's kind of a funky player. He's kind of lanky and has like just that little bit of shiftiness to his game, and he'll like get up into your body and just lean back and hit little floaters and jump shots, and he just got going and cooked the Pistons. And, honestly, every team in the NBA has losses like this over the course of the season, and it just seems like the younger teams that are on the rise, think like the Timberwolves 2 years ago or the Grizzlies 3 years ago or this year the Detroit Pistons or like OKC 2 years ago. they tend to like win a lot of these types of games and they don't have as many of these types of lulls, but we're just barely starting to see a little bit of that from Detroit in the last couple of weeks as they've had a couple of these ugly losses. But for the most part, they've just been a machine that just chews up and spits teams out with their athleticism and physicality.
One of the things that I'm not saying it's this, but one of the things I always think about it with young teams is the season is long and the All-Star break is a distraction. And so you just wonder, like I always hear veteran teams say you could steal games going into the All-Star break because there's a lot of young players that just get distracted with the big thing they have around the corner. So
they're thinking about vacation. Yeah. Like dude, when I was in NAIA my last year, we started the year like 13-0 and we like beat a Division 1-2. We were kicking everybody's ass. We had this week right before Christmas break where we had 4 games in 1 week right before Christmas break. And we played 2 top 10 teams in the nation in the first 3 games, beat them both. Yeah. And then on the Friday, when everyone was getting ready to fly home after the game, we dropped the game to like an unranked team. And it was like,
I'm telling you, man,
everybody's thinking about vacation.
These lower level hoops, it's funny because we did one at Arizona State every single year. And it was on New Year's Eve would be the championship game. And it was like, that was our favorite day of the year. Not the game. Immediately after being on that campus and going out, it was crazy. It was one of the greatest times. And it was like, all right, we have to get through the championship because this.
Yeah, got to get done so we could not play basketball
exactly.
for a little bit.
The Hornets beat the Rockets last night, 109-99. And this game has really made waves for some high-profile post-game comments from Ime Udoka, who was asked about Şengün's struggling defense the last 2 games, and he said that it's the same as it's been for the last 2 years. Kind of throwing under the bus a little bit. Kevin Durant had a frustration moment with Şengün on one play where you could see and even hear him talking to him like, hey, are you ever going to defend? Rockets reeling a little bit here. The vibes seem a little bit off.
Yeah, so Şengün has been the target in pick and roll this entire time. Ime Udoka is correct about that. I will say Şengün has some pretty good athletic traits, and he is capable of having nights where I'm like, oh, Şengün's playing some defense. But ultimately, I was talking with you about this a little bit before we started recording. There's a similar dynamic to what happened with Jokic, which is if you're a bigger, slower center, you're gonna get attacked in pick and roll. That's just how life works. Like there's actually very few players in the NBA that can guard all 5 positions. So like you're gonna have guys that can get targeted by certain types of players. But the Nuggets found a scheme that works for the most part. And they'll run deep drop on occasion, but for the most part, it's bring Jokic up. Jokic is very active with his hands and is good at anticipating what's happening and getting deflections and kind of making life difficult. And then they rotate out of it. That's what Houston's going to have to figure out. They're going to have to commit to a specific style for how to handle these situations. And my thing is when you've got the type of length on the back line and athleticism and rotation that they have, I actually think they make a lot of sense as a team that can bring Şengün up to the level more and try to get the ball out of the ball handler's hands and exist more in rotation.
Yeah, but you know what that is, JT? Exhausting. And I honestly think, again, like that type of defense is the hardest defense to play because it requires the most just lateral rotations and running and second efforts and everything else. And I think that can wear on a team over time. And when it looks bad, it looks really bad because all it takes is one guy not giving the effort and it becomes wide open layups and plays like that. So
he's losing contain on the ball. That's the big one. Like no matter where you are in your drop, if you're in a deep drop or a high drop, you can't let the ball handler get behind you. Like if you're up at the level, your job is to get him to get rid of the ball.
There's no
and if you're in a deep drop,
you.
Your job is to keep him in front of the rim. And like Şengün's losing contain on those just way too often.
They're a team that, we're going to talk about a little bit later, but they did not make a move. And to me, I think it's a mistake. I've been saying it all year because I could see it coming, but I think it's a mistake. And one of the reasons I have a big winner as another team is because they did not make a move. But by the way, the Hornets are making a lot of teams question their defensive aptitude. And it's because they're a great offensive team disguised as a bad team, but they're actually great. And a lot of defenses go and play them and are like, do we suck? Are we bad at defense? No, their best punch on offense is just so freaking good. The Warriors got a win over the Suns last night, 101-97. You saw the end of this one. I did not catch it, but it is a surprising box score. What's going on here?
Really good defense down the stretch, played Colin Gillespie and Dylan Brooks into some super tough pull-up jump shots, cleaned up the glass and got out in transition, got some easy ones in transition, and then just a lot of key contributions, some big threes. Will Richard hit a big one. Al Horford hit a big one. DeAnthony Melton's dribble penetration continues to be huge. He had a massive driving layup late, and then they ended up getting a transition bucket that ended up being the eventual game winner. And I've talked about this before, but Moses Moody, the reason why he's so much better at perimeter defense than Jonathan Kuminga is he's just so good at being disruptive. Like, he's active with his hands and physical. He's not just there. He's there to disrupt your rhythm. And he logged an unbelievable defensive rep down the stretch on Dylan Brooks, and they got out of there with the win. Steve Kerr called it after the game like the championship, because he said how bad the team needed to win. And it was good. They were down 14 in the fourth quarter of that one.
Very pragmatic comments from Steve Kerr about their chances and everything after the game. Let's go to the last game real quick because I want to get to these trades. But the Lakers beat the Sixers 119-115. Austin Reeves returns. He gets 35 points. Joel Embiid's been on a tear, 35, 7 and 7. What happened in this one?
This one was interesting. So Luka comes out and is just abysmally bad, misses a bunch of threes and has a bunch of turnovers. And then on one of his turnovers, he just kind of stops playing and subs out of the game and runs to the locker room with some hamstring soreness. We don't see him again the rest of the night. Joel Embiid was absolutely frying them, just kind of looked just like prime Joel Embiid, hitting the hesitation jump shots, drawing fouls, and just walking to the free throw line. He was even like making defensive plays and doing some damage around the rim. Like, Embiid's playing amazing. But the entire game turns on Austin Reeves, who just goes absolutely crazy in the second half, ends up finishing with 35. LeBron was pretty bad in this one, but made a couple of key plays late. A couple guys hit some big threes. Marcus Smart, 2 massive threes in the second half. There's been a pretty clear line of demarcation with the Lakers in their record when Marcus makes a three versus when Marcus doesn't make a three. It's just because they're so devoid of shooting. But honestly, Austin's just a really fun player to watch, and it was fun seeing him back on the court last night.
Yeah, the Lakers are one of those teams where post All-Star break, I feel like we'll get the first look at them, really, of this new look of them. So it'll be interesting. There's a handful of teams that way. We are in the dog days of the season in that when you turn on these games night to night, there's just so many players out that you feel like you're not even getting a great read on the actual team.
And like every team. For the record, this is why Charlotte, in a lot of ways, is playing so well, is all their main guys are healthy.
Yeah. Right now, as opposed to earlier in the year when they weren't and they looked bad. Exactly. So it is so funny, man. I keep looking at, look at the Knicks are on a 8-game win streak. Who did they play? All the worst teams and, had relative health or whatever. And this team's on a losing streak. Who are they playing? The best teams on the road, and they're shorthanded. It's kind of the story of the NBA right now.
The NBA season's hard, man.
All right, let's get into trade season.
Your schedule is insane right now. Denver's schedule is insane coming
up. It sucks, man. It was one of those ones where if you looked at the schedule at the beginning of the year, you can kind of predict. It's kind of a fun game to do, as you predict and say, when is the fan base going to panic most? Like, when is everybody going to say, I'm done with this team? And it's in the moment they're in right now. Throw in all the injuries they've had, and it makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about these trades. Let's get into them. So we're going to talk about them in terms of teams that, I guess it's weird to say one, because I'm not even sure, like, winners and losers. It doesn't even feel right to call it that. We have to let it play out. It's more about like consequential, optimistic consequentialism, I guess. Like, who made a move that you feel is consequential that is likely to have a positive impact on the team? And I put these in order. And I hate my first one, in part because we've already talked about it on the show, so we can go a little bit quick. But it's the Cleveland Cavaliers to me, because I'm not a huge Darius Garland guy. I think Harden gives them something this year that is at least interesting, if not extremely risky. But they also got Ellis and Schroeder, which are big moves. And I didn't even know this detail until I read it on, I believe, Kevin Pelton's write-up, or maybe it was Bobby Marks on ESPN, that through all of these moves they made, they saved $100 million in luxury tax payments. Anytime you can save that much money and say, I think their team is definitively better, or at least more, gives them a shot of hope in life, that's a big deal. This is not the best team ever to have to come in number one on a trade deadline. But to your point, there's a lot of medium moves this year, not a lot of big ones. So I ended up saying the Cavs are the winners of the trade deadline.
Yeah, I have the Cavs at the top of my list too. I'm with you. Like, discussing winners, it's a totally different conversation because now you're talking about value. Like,
yeah, exactly.
A team can pay market price for a really good player and not have won the trade because they paid the price, but it could be consequential because it vaults them into another level as a basketball team. Although with the Cavs specifically, I do think they did win a trade in the Kings deal, because getting Keon Ellis with a bad contract from DeAndre Hunter is like legitimately an awesome value play. But, I think there's two different ways to look at it. There's first the James Harden piece of it, which, Darius Garland, when he was at his best, when he's 100% healthy and he can really gash up defenses with his drives, he is such a dynamic athlete in terms of his quickness that I could see it. It would be defensible for the Cavs to be like, let's see if this guy can get healthy and see if maybe we can recapture our ceiling from last year. But it just kept not happening. And every time he's less than 100%, all of his flaws rise to the surface. Like, he just has been absolutely butchered in switches this year. Like, attacking Garland one-on-one is getting you like 1.25 points per possession this season, including passes. It's been a devastating part of their defense, right? So, like, them making this move goes to a more reliable. His ceiling is not as like Garland when he's at his best is better than James Harden, but he just can't ever get there. So James is a smart, like a safer option there. And then also James is a much more stout one-on-one defender. Harden's having an awesome season guarding one-on-ones. And then lastly, in a conference that has Tyrese Maxey and, Emmanuel Quickley and Jamal Shed and, Jalen Brunson, and, we'll see if Deuce McBride can get healthy in time for the playoffs. But there's a lot of small, quick guards in the East. And so them pulling Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder, two of the best small guard defenders in the league, I think is like a legitimate playoff ceiling raiser for them. So I just look at the Cavs as definitively better than they were before the deadline by a pretty wide margin. Yeah. We'll see. I want to see them play a few times before I stack them up against Detroit, Boston, and New York. But to me, they look like a team that's way better than they were 2 weeks ago.
I didn't think they were going anywhere, and now the door's open for me to say, okay, let's see how it plays out. So that's a win. It's like you gave life into something that I think previously didn't. But there's two questions I have for them. Number one, James Harden has never been an active off-ball player the way he needs to be off-ball. And that part to me is like, okay, well, he's probably going to find himself in that in big moments, like fourth quarters now. If Donovan Mitchell's attacking and he swings to you and you have to make the extra play or do this or that, is that something he's comfortable with? We'll have to find out. I'm skeptical. And then two, it's such an identity shift, all three players, and there's really 2 months in the season to get it together. That's the tough thing. This is why trades at the trade deadline don't often lead to championships. They can lead to improved play, but not championships. And I'm looking at this saying, yeah, but they're trying to make it work now. It's just a lot to ask. Nonetheless, you got to take a swing. I think their swing was really good. And the fact that it saves them money on top of everything is kind of wild. So I think it's easy. But we've talked a lot about them, so I want to move quickly. My number two, this is where it gets controversial, I think, because there's a handful of teams. Like if we were to tier these in terms of how consequential they are, I think that one is the one that's the most consequential. And there's a bunch here that are moderately consequential, and it's just they're all in the same tier to me. But I am so intrigued by what the Pacers did because they're obviously doing this gap year thing where they, have been really bad, but they got a guy in Zubac that I absolutely love. Zubac is an incredible big who is very smart and can do a variety of things. He could defend. I'm not sure he's the right fit for their style of play, which makes me think it's a talent. They might be the most talented version of themselves, even counting their championship run last year. They might be more talented next year. The fit is a bit of a question. How fast can he play? And, how versatile is their defense? How speedy is their defense going to be? We'll have to find out. But what I love about this one is they have the weirdest pick swap ever. You saw this, top 4 protected. So if they get one of the top 4 players, it's there. And then 10, and then protected after 10. And it makes me wonder what they're going to try to do. My hunch is they're going to try to just win games from here on out, be the 10th worst team to guarantee that they have some kind of pick, but it's likely to be the 10th pick as opposed to higher. But I just love this. I love it for now. I love it for next year. I think it puts them in a very interesting spot. I think that they are one of the winners.
It's interesting because that lottery pick piece of it, because it's top 1 through 4 protected. So in theory, if they keep losing and they win the lottery, they keep the pick.
But you can't guarantee that.
But you can't guarantee that. Yeah. I also think it could get complicated because, I really like Darren Peterson and AJ DeBonsa, but how it goes with young stars. They need runway to kind of figure out who they are as players. And this is kind of a fully formed team. Pascal Siakam is a veteran high-level starter. Ivica Zubac is a veteran high-level starter. Tyrese Halliburton is an established commodity in this league at this point. I'd even argue the same thing for Aaron Nesmith and Andrew Nembhard, right? And so as I look at the group, I almost think the best-case scenario for them is them to get, the 3rd pick.
Really?
Because then they could trade it and just be like, okay, we're going to move Cam Boozer plus some salary for some substantial upgrade at this position or that. Like, bear with me, like, and hear me out like this. Like, imagine they get the 3rd pick and they call up New Orleans and they're like, hey, we want Trey Murphy.
Yeah.
You know, like that's the kind of thing that I think could get really exciting. Because, like, as I look at the team, Zubac, I think, is a really good player. I think he's better than Miles Turner. He's different.
I agree.
Different player. Like, Miles Turner's probably a little bit better as like a straight up rim protector, but I think Zubac is probably a better all around defender. Azu's having a bad year defending switches this year, but he was very good defending switches last year. And Miles Turner had a lot of problems with, we were talking about Şengün and ball contain. That was a huge problem for Turner last year in the postseason. He would come up to the level and he'd get beat and they'd give up 5 on 3s, which were really bad. But like, I do think Turner brings like a different offensive dynamic because he can pop and Zubac can't pop, but overall Zu's a better player. I think they'll figure that out. Even the pace stuff, even the running up and down the floor stuff, I think they'll figure out. The main concern I have really is just, we've seen over the last several years, similar to what we were talking about with Garland, there's like healthy, fast Tyrese Halliburton, and then there's like 80% athleticism Tyrese Halliburton. And those are 2 pretty different players with 2 pretty different ceilings. And so I do think this Pacers team could use a little bit more juice if they want to stay competitive in the East. And so I think the best case scenario for them is they stay in that top 4, but they end up with pick 3 or pick 4. Because if it's pick 1 or pick 2, they might do something like, okay, let's trade Siakam and let's go into this like next year, you know, like that kind of thing. I think if they get pick 3 or 4, you move that pick for a super high level upgrade out on the wing somewhere. Like, I really like Nesmith, but if you had like a guy like Trey Murphy there at the 3, I think that's a team that could be really, really competitive in the East.
I love Darren Peterson so much that I'd still, if any team I'm on, I would root for getting that guy.
I'm high on Darren Peterson too.
I think he's unbelievably skilled and smooth and fast processing, all of the things I love in a player. I think the other thing, though, about Zubac is he's really good in the pocket, and part of it is he knows what spot to be in. He's not going to be the above the rim every time, throw it up there, but he's really good at when he catches in that spot, finishing with the short touch. He's got his floater statistically is as good as Jokic's, you know, just in terms of hitting that one. But he also has great hands, and he just catches the ball in the pocket and gives you a target there. So what's interesting is Carlisle's a brilliant coach. Halliburton's a brilliant point guard. They're going to have to adjust who they are in important ways, small but important ways. But you give me smart players together, and I just think it's going to work. And that's why I love that one. That's why I think they're one of the winners. And we'll see what they do. If they guarantee themselves the pick by falling to 10, it would be so fascinating. And it'll be easy to do. One of the stories of this trade deadline is all of the tanking teams have shown their hand that they are like, we are fully tanking from here on out. And so they might not have to try that hard to jump up to the 10 pick. It might actually be very easy for them to do because there's a lot of teams that are going to try hard to lose. All right, let's move on to this next one. One last one before we take our first break. Number 3, I think I put this in wrong order, and I kind of want to go backwards on it. But I'll stick with my list that I have. It's the Detroit Pistons for getting Kevin Huerter and a slight pick improvement somehow. Somehow they actually improved their pick situation through all of this, losing Jaden Ivey. And, you know, so the moves they made, I think were fine for them in the roster that they have this year. They desperately need shooting. Huerter gives them another one. And it's almost like buy low. He hasn't shot the ball well. I think he'll shoot the ball well in Detroit. So now they have 2 shooters that they can go to, which is, in my opinion, doubles the amount of like go-to shooters they have. I think his shooting will improve in that spot, and that's why I think that they made an important move.
Yeah, Kevin Huerter is having a brutal year shooting the ball everywhere but the left corner. That was what was funny about his game winner the other night. He had sat out something crazy like the last 7 minutes of regulation, and then Billy Donovan subs him in on just the last possession to just sit in the left corner, which is the one spot he's been shooting well, and he ends up hitting the game winner off that extra pass from Kobe White. But like theoretically, you're rebuilding some of that dynamic that you had last year with Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr., with Kevin Huerter and Duncan Robinson is just these 2 shooters that are running up and down the floor. I was pretty disappointed in the Pistons deadline on several fronts. First, I wanted them to do more. I just thought that I think this team is so damn good in ways that are guaranteed to succeed in the postseason in terms of their physicality on the perimeter and their physicality on the interior. This is just a big ass-kicking team, like every position group. And so that's guaranteed to work night in, night out in the playoffs. That's just like, that's not a thing like, oh, they're making shots or they're missing shots. No, like every night they're going to be big. Every night they're going to have a depth of perimeter defenders. Every night they're going to maul you on the interior.
Yeah.
So like a highly skilled offensive player getting infused into this mix could work wonders for them. And so this is where I get confused. So you dump Jaden Ivey. So let's just say you don't believe in Jaden Ivey for whatever reason. You're just like, oh, if we're going to pay some guy and, you know, I've got to pay Asar Thompson and who knows what we're doing with Ron Holland, and we're about to pay Jalen Duren, and obviously Cade's going to be very expensive. If you're saying that Jaden's not your guy, that's fine. But what's your short-term solution there? Like, who's the secondary creator on this team? Is it Danis Jenkins? Is it Karis LeVert? Or is it Tobias Harris? Like, I think it's a big part of why this team has been a mediocre half-court offense all year long. And so let me just provide a counter example. Like, if you're going to let Jaden Ivey walk, why not you be the team that goes get Ayo Dosunmu and bring him in and have him be a guy that's going to be your secondary ball handler that brings some offensive punch? Like,
is he that much better of a creator, though?
If it's better than nothing. Like, if you get rid of Ivy and all you bring back is Herder, like, I just don't think that this Pistons team has enough offensive skill to win 4 playoff rounds. And I'm just surprised they didn't do something to bring something in there. And it just feels to me like they're a team that does not have a plan for their second star. And like, maybe they're just waiting around for the right moment to pounce. But if that's the case, then you're limiting this team's ability to compete. And I think they could easily win the East if they would have made some sort of substantial offensive upgrade.
I've said this on the show already, but you never know until, like, you'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. But oftentimes teams are more worried about going too quick than going too slow. And I think both Houston and Detroit were the two teams I looked at and said, hey, you're in great spot. You feel good about yourself, but don't settle. Go all in, because it just takes maybe one move to shore it up. The Pistons at least made a move to try to bring in a shooter who I believe will shoot a little bit better. But to your point, I also agree that I expected, or was hoping at least, for them to do something more. And certainly on Houston's side, I looked at it and said, I do not buy this team as presently constructed. If they make a move, I'll buy it to shore up some of their weaknesses. They decided not to, and I look at it and go, I just don't think you're winning it this year then. I don't think there's a world where you win it, and that's a disappointment. We got to take a quick break, though. I want to get – there's 2 other teams. Like I said, as I did my list, I put the Pistons 3rd, but I really should have put them 5th. There's 2 other teams that I think could probably go ahead of them, and we'll get to both of them on the other side, as well as all the other smaller trades and interesting moves from around the NBA. 2026 is the year you rewrite your story, own your future, and make your entrepreneurial dreams come true. Start your business with Shopify in 2026 and become who you're meant to be. I'm a big fan of entrepreneurs. I've been one my entire life, even before ALLCITY, helping launch ALLCITY. Shopify is that type of program that helps you with so many different things. It gives you everything you need to sell online and in person. Millions of entrepreneurs have already made the leap, from household names to first-time business owners just getting started. It gives you the tools to build your dream store. Choose from hundreds of beautiful templates that you can customize to match your brand. Setup is fast with Shopify's built-in AI tools that write product descriptions and headlines and help you edit product photos. Marketing is built in too. Create email and social media campaigns that reach customers wherever they scroll. As you grow, Shopify grows with you. Handle more orders, expand to new markets, and do it all from the same dashboard. In 2026, stop waiting and start selling with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/allcity. That's shopify.com/allcity. Hear your first cha-ching this new year with Shopify by your side. I also want to tell you guys about Underdog. Fast breaks, buzzer beaters, and block parties are back, and Underdog is the best place to get in on all of the action. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite player will go higher or lower on stats like points, rebounds, steals, and more. Get your picks right, and you could win up to 5,000 times your cash. Let's take a look. Tonight, we've got the Knicks and the Pistons. That might be the game of the night around the NBA. Here's what I decided to go with. OG Anunoby, 17.5 points, lower. Cade Cunningham, 40.5 points, rebounds, and assists. I'm going higher. Jalen Brunson, 2.5 3-pointers made. I'm also going higher there. I think it's going to be a stars night, but not the role players night. Download the app today. Use promo code ALLNBA to score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. That's promo code ALLNBA. Underdog. Make picks. Win money. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama or Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, or Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play-and-get-terms_DFS_.html for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. All right, back here, segment 2, All NBA Show, Friday edition. I'm with Jason Timpf. Let's get back into these trades here. So the next one that I think is most consequential, that I probably should have moved ahead, is what the Wolves did, adding Ayo Dosunmu. And by the way, it was just reported right before we went live, they got back Mike Conley. So he'll spiritually return to the locker room just to be there as a guy, which I actually think is kind of important. I think it's useful to have a 15th guy that can be like a playoff Yoda for you. Yeah. So I think that's kind of a nice role. But Dosunmu, to me, comes in and can fulfill what they lost from Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Another guy that can be pesky on ball when you go up against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jamal Murray and some of these other guys, get physical, offer fouls, but who on offense also has a role to play and can do some things that can swing a series. So I actually think it's a huge pickup for them. Dosunmu was one of those guys that I think every team was after. There's always one lower level player that every contending team wants. They're the ones that got him, and I think he actually fits them very well.
Yeah, I think he's better than Nickeil Alexander-Walker offensively last year. Nikhil's having a pretty damn good season for Atlanta right now, but the player that he was last year in Minnesota, I think Ayo is a little bit more polished, a little bit more reliable all around. I think Nikhil's a better defender than Ayo was, but Ayo is, I should say, but I still think Ayo's a good, big, strong defender that can defend multiple types of guys. Overall, what I really liked about this move is it's doubling down on a strength for Minnesota. One of the things that I really like about Minnesota is they're incredibly athletic and they have a lot of shooting. And one of the things about working in the playoffs is you can ratchet things up defensively in a way in all your position groups with that athleticism. And then as you move the ball through elite defenses like OKC that are going to concede a lot of open threes as they get super aggressive, you need to have guys that can finish off those sequences. And so when you look at how much better Ant is than he was last season, how much better Jaden is than he was last season, how much better Rudy is than he was last season, and then you infuse another athlete who can shoot. And this guy has some real upside. Like he's a dude on any given night who can go for 20, 25, 30 points if he gets hot. And I just think that he fits that specific mold for what Minnesota was looking for as an off guard that's very skilled off of Ant. It was relatively affordable there at 4 second-round picks, right? So I just thought it was the perfect go all in while still maintaining your flexibility type of move for Minnesota. This was one of my favorite deals from this deadline. I had it second on my list as most impactful.
They also didn't really give up anything of extreme value. You could say some flexibility because some of the picks, those picks aren't necessarily valuable in of themselves, but they are things that allow you to complete trades, and they used up some of those. But getting off of Leonard Miller and Rob Dillingham is that's perfect. Those guys had make no impact on the success of your season, so you might as well move on from them to get a player that will, and their window's open. So Minnesota, I believed in from the beginning of the year. I think this shores them up. My last note on it is, I hate that they can sign Mike Conley. And I get the rule that you can trade a guy, but you can't. If they get waived, then you can't add him. But if they get traded again and waived, you can. This feels to me, with how we have players who own agencies now and all this stuff, this seems to me like there's got to be some teams taking note of we can do that.
A little premeditated?
Yeah, premeditated. We're going to trade. They can't keep him. We know it. He's going to get traded over here. It's weird to me that they basically just cut salary in a way that didn't cost them anything. I feel like the rule was designed to avoid that, and they were able to take advantage. I don't like it.
A salary dump where you don't lose the player. How often do you?
Yeah, exactly. That sort of thing? It's a loophole discovered for
weird
sure.
When it was happening that I was like, wait, is this a precursor to a Giannis deal? Why are they moving Conley like this? Because everything you hear is about how beloved Conley is and how much of a leader he is. And I 100% agree with you. I think having those types of dudes in your locker room is imperative to winning a championship. And yeah, they just talk about having your cake and eating it too. What a turnaround.
Doesn't seem fair. Conley, Can't believe it. Tim Conley and Mike Conley conspiring against the league right now. The next winner I have here is the Oklahoma City Thunder, and I actually should have put them higher. I like the Jared McCain swing for them. I think it's good, but that's not even why I have them here. I really have it for two reasons. One, the Clippers have made themselves worse and might fall in the standings. Probably won't, just because, as I mentioned, there's real tanking teams now, so it'll be easy to stay at the level you're at with all these teams trying to lose. But nonetheless, they didn't make themselves better, so there's a chance that they fall slightly and that pit gets better for Oklahoma City. But the real reason is you got to move out of the Wolves that we just said we liked, but it's not a huge move. It's not a huge swing. It's like, okay, they shored up some things. The Rockets did not make a move. The Spurs didn't make a move. The Lakers made a tiny one. I think if you're OKC, you look around and say, we're better than everyone. Let's just see if those teams get better. The answer is the West didn't get better. And so the status quo has to feel good about where they're at. In addition to the fact that they were able to do the most OKC thing ever, which is take a swing on Jared McCain, maybe working out. And their whole system is predicated on this idea that they have guys behind the main guys. So Cason Wallace, Wiggins, all these guys that have been great. We love you. If you're the right price going forward, we'll keep you. If not, we just have this like revolving shark teeth of players that we trust to kind of fill in the spot behind you. So to me, they had a great deadline.
Yeah, there had been a kind of an accumulation of injuries that hit a specific talent set for OKC, in the sense that you lose AJ Mitchell and his dribble penetration, you lose J-Dub in his dribble penetration because of the hamstring, and then now you lose Shea until after the All-Star break because of this abdominal issue. And so even when Shea comes back, you're going to be without J-Dub for a little while. And so I think the Thunder needed an alternative way to generate some advantages in the half court when they get there. And I think one of the simplest ways, we talked about this with the Hornets. Remember when we were discussing them last week, the idea of like the ability to hit shots off the move or off the dribble is what opens up all those offensive rebounding opportunities for the Hornets, right? Like similarly, if you deal with Jared McCain coming off of any sort of action as a shooter, it will create some kind of advantage for their talent to be able to capitalize on. And so in the short term, I like it because they just need more ways to break down half-court defense because of how many injuries they've had to their dribble drive guys. But in the long term, I like it as well because it's kind of a move to index towards one of the biggest weaknesses on the roster, which is shooting. And, especially when you've got stars like J-Dub, Shea, and Chet, who are all elite defenders, you can get away with more in terms of what you're doing with those fourth and fifth guys as shooters. And it just gives the Thunder options. So they've simply got better in the short term, possibly got better in the long term, depending on how much Jared McCain plays when they're fully healthy. And then lastly, like you said, this development with the Clippers could it's up in the air because of the tanking, but it could potentially net them a very high pick coming up in this draft.
That's the only piece of this is there's so many tanking teams that the Clippers just can't catch them, man. They really can. I mean, you're talking about Utah, New Orleans, Brooklyn, Washington. Those teams can't be caught. There's nothing you can do about it. So you're going to kind of stay in the same range more or less.
The clip of Darren Peterson hitting the game winner in slow-mo is going to like single-handedly drive the worst tanking fest in the history of the NBA.
That guy's so good, man. I can't believe how excited I am every time I get to see his highlights. It's unbelievable. All right, the next team. So now those are the top ones. The next one I go here, I see a lot of people have very high on their list. They weren't quite as high in mine, and that's the Boston Celtics. Like we talked about with the Cavs, where they made moves that also saved money. They did this. They put themselves below the luxury tax with the moves that they made. But the big deal is they add Vucevic, who everybody's high on this move because of aggregate talent and like, okay, they have a big body and they can throw it inside and get this. But that seems sort of not how they play. And so there is this, I'm a little hesitant just because I look at it and say, okay, it feels like an identity shift. Like, okay, we added something that we're going to have to adjust to. Nonetheless, the aggregate talent is important. He's a good player and he gives them a different option. So how do you feel about this one? Are you as ambivalent about as I am, or do you feel pretty strong that this is a great move for them?
I liked this move. This was one that I had targeted throughout the season as my favorite center option for the Celtics, just because I was thinking realistically about their cap situation and their asset situation. Like, I think they wanted to have an option that was different than Nimi Keita. It's actually been really good. Nimi's been great. He's provided really high-level rim protection and vertical spacing and defensive rebounding, and Keita's just a really good player. But after that, it gets pretty tricky, and they've had certain moments this season where they've had to go small for one reason or another because Cade is struggling in some certain type of matchup, and then all of a sudden they look way too small. And what they haven't had is like the bigger bruiser type of style at the center position, who's also an elite defensive rebounder, but in a way that wins the battles on the ground versus in the air. And then a little bit of that like Al Horford-esque, Kristaps Porzingis-esque, can I pick and pop and can I beat a mismatch in the post type of dynamic. And when you really think about it, as soon as Jason Tatum comes back, that's most likely going to slot one of their guards back on the bench, which was going to directly influence how much Anthony Simons was going to get to play and how much opportunity he was going to have with the basketball in his hands. And so even though Anthony had been great, and I would argue he was a pro. He just came into Boston and just did his job, and by all accounts was a great teammate and did everything right while he was in Boston. But you were basically going to lose him anyway, and you turned him into Nikola Vucevic. So what was essentially a free transition from a guard that was about to become a problem in your rotation to a legitimate positional need. And this is what Brad Stevens talked about in his presser. He's like, this was about addressing a positional need. And to me, like, you're probably going to be able to re-sign Vooch at a very discounted deal, and you didn't have to include any draft compensation. And so when you really dig into it as the expense relative to the talent that you're getting, I just love it as a cost-effective move. And with Vooch, he is like a legitimate spot-up threat. He's shooting spot-up threes super well this year. Started the year cold as a pick-and-pop player, but he's been shooting pick-and-pop threes extremely well as of late. That was an important dynamic with Porzingis and Horford in recent seasons, so he brings that back. A legitimate post-up threat, more as a passer than as a scorer, but he's a guy that will create open shots out of the post. And then when you do run into some of these bigger, more physical centers at various points throughout the postseason, now you have an option, a bigger, stronger, sturdier type of option there. And again, like, let's say it goes south and you end up having to lose Vucevic. You didn't invest anything in this move. You didn't waste any sort of asset. So I just looked at it as a really like low cost to relatively high reward move. And I just thought it was really savvy from Brad Stevens.
I would agree it's savvy. Consequential is the part I'm not so sure about. It does feel like, and people have put in the chat, he's an upgraded Luka Garza. That's kind of how I view it as well. Is he feels more like a utility player, thought of as a star player, but as a utility player in the system they run. And then I saw some people saying if he doesn't guard, he won't play. I just don't know if he can. A lot of people will get mad at these big men, like traditional big men, and say like they're not working hard. They are. Defense in today's NBA is so much about speed. And if you're a big body, like true 7-footer post player, you just can't move on the perimeter the way like these other guys can. So I don't think it's a matter of him wanting to or meeting. It's just, can he do it to the system that they're required of? I don't know. We'll find out.
Well, and when Tatum gets back, Boston has that unique ability to tuck away their center on a non-shooter like that. Yeah. The Boston, Jason Tatum, I was talking about this with a buddy yesterday about like the difference between Tatum and Brown. And Brown's been awesome this year, and there's been all this sudden debate about him versus Tatum. And it is a conversation now in a way it didn't used to be, credit to Jaylen Brown. But the big thing that always goes under the radar with Jason Tatum is he can guard centers. Like, Jason Tatum is a legitimate, can guard 1 through 5 type of guy who can also anchor you on the defensive glass. And so a lot of the things that the Celtics were able to get away with Horford and Porzingis defensively in recent years centered around Jason Tatum and his ability to guard centers. And so even when you're talking about a guy like Vooch defensively, when Tatum comes back, he's going to be able to help Vooch have more achievable defensive roles.
Let's go rapid fire now. So some of these other deals that I just don't even want to rank them, but they're just interesting deals. And we'll start with the Knicks adding Alvarado. He's, of course, from New York City. They needed a backup point guard with Miles McBride out basically for the rest of the year. So Alvarado's an interesting one. He's been buried in New Orleans for the last couple of years. I think it's a good pickup. I mean, I think he'll play, and he'll probably have some big moments. He's got playing for the hometown team. There's always all that stuff. I don't know how consequential it'll be other than just saving them at a position of need. But if you said, obviously Miles McBride, we know what they look like with him. I don't think it'll be as good as that. But he is good for what they needed at the moment.
Yeah, it's just insurance. And it's insurance on the Deuce McBride injury. And, like, I think the Jordan Clarkson experience has been very up and down for Knicks fans. Like, I've watched Knicks games this year where I'm like, oh, Clarkson won them this game. Yeah. And then I've watched other Knicks games this year where I'm like, oh, Clarkson lost them this game. And so, like, I think having a more high floor option and Jose Alvarado that, like, every single day is going to bring a certain amount of, like, ball pressure and just energy and infectious kind of, like, bench energy guy type of play. I just like it as just an alternative punch that they have there. And Yabusele wasn't really working out for them anyway. So I like the move.
It's also one of those things where when you have a championship team that's been there, you add somebody at the deadline who's coming from a horrible situation. It's kind of like a reminder of, hey, he's going to be so excited to be there that it might just give some energy. A sneaky one I'm so intrigued by. I hate Jonathan Kuminga. I'll be honest with you. I don't like players that don't like to play, that aren't high IQ players that want to. They're reaching for a system whereby they understand it's a team sport. He's a guy that drives me nuts. And yet, I find myself intrigued by him landing in Atlanta because I love Jalen Johnson. I think he's one of my favorite players. And then you give him a Kuminga, and I go, man, the athleticism of those two together is so intriguing. I'm not calling this a win. I'm just saying I'm intrigued by him being in that spot.
Dude, I hated this trade. Like, of all of the places for Kuminga to go, he needed to go. Like, you want to know why Sacramento made sense? They don't have a power forward.
Well,
and they can afford to just give Jonathan Kuminga the ball and have him screw off for 3 straight years, and no one cares because the team sucks anyway. Like, the thing, like, here's the problem. Like, you're trying to recreate the Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum dynamic, right? Like, that's the idea. Like, oh, what if Kuminga and Jalen Johnson just turn into these two unbelievable forwards, blah, blah, blah. The difference is Jaylen Brown is a 3 and Jason Tatum is a 4, and their skill sets perfectly mesh with each other. And one of the big reasons why is, like, Jaylen Brown, when he wants to be, is legitimately a top tier, one of the very best perimeter defenders in the entire NBA. And so in order for you to play the 3 and the 4 together in unison, one of you guys has to be an extremely high level perimeter player, meaning like high level ball handling, high level shooting, high level perimeter defense. And both Jalen Johnson and Jonathan Kuminga are inconsistent jump shooters, guys that can't guard on the perimeter. Actually, think they're both bad off-ball defenders too. So, like, I think these guys are 2 flawed 4s. Jalen Johnson has way more upside.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in Jalen Johnson in like 2-3 years. I'm just pretty low on him right this second.
Really?
I don't think he can create for himself, and he's not a very good defensive player. And that to me makes you pretty limited at this point. But, like, I just feel like Jalen Johnson had a trajectory where he could become a legitimate superstar forward in this league, and you're throwing a Kuminga-sized speed bump in his development trajectory because they play the same position. What is he famous for? Pouting over touches and how involved he is in the offense. Which
he can't be that.
Of all the Kuminga spots, this was like one of the last ones I would have picked.
Here's where I disagree with you. You're basically saying he should have gone to Sacramento or Chicago or one of these places, become a chucker on a terrible team. That's what he is now. We already know he can be that. If Kuminga's going to make it in the NBA, he's going to make it because he evolves slightly. He gets nudged slightly. You go to the Warriors, the ultimate ball movement and high IQ team. Like, okay, that's too much for him. It's like you threw him into Harvard. He doesn't belong in Harvard. Now he's at like a nice JUCO. Like, let him go there and kind of get his grades up. This should hopefully push him in the right direction. I know he could have gone to Sacramento and scored an inefficient 20 points, been Cam Thomas basically, where it's just like, all right, yeah, okay. Would we learn anything about what he is as an actual player? No. This is one where I'm excited to learn, and the athleticism between those two is just so special. So, but I do hear you. There's a real risk that my guy Jalen Johnson gets poisoned by having to share the court with that guy. So, you're right. Maybe the most interesting move that should have been in the top 5 in terms of intrigue alone, but the Utah Jazz, after wandering aimlessly through the desert for a while, have gone pretty heavy on an enormous lineup, picking up Jaren Jackson Jr. Their lineup next year projects to be Keontae George, Ace Bailey, Lauri Markkanen, Jaren Jackson Jr., Walker Kessler. It's an enormous lineup. The first time I heard it, like when the trade first happened, I said, okay, I saw what they did at the beginning of the year. It's interesting. They're going to be huge. It's a problem because it's so huge. But then you look at it and go, who in that team passes and like sets the table? There are a bunch of guys that shoot the ball, and then Keontae George. I don't know if I buy this lineup actually fitting together. And then I thought they're one of the teams that could get a top pick, maybe DeBance or one of these guys. And if you just said they won the lottery, best case scenario for them, they win the lottery and they add one of those guys to their roster, which of those 5 guys I just mentioned isn't starting then? You're cannibalizing something that you have by building out this roster.
Kick out Ace Bailey and you take Darren Peterson. No question.
I agree, but then doesn't that kind of ruin Ace Bailey in some way? Like, I am not the hugest believer in him anyway, but doesn't it almost like punt on this guy that 4 months ago you were hoping could be a cornerstone piece?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they'd have a hard time trading him, and I think he'd have some value there because he's still in the mystery box phase, kind of like Kuminga was in year 2. You know what I mean? I should say if they trade him this offseason.
Yeah.
But I loved this move.
Really?
You know, it's a casual reminder that like you really only need to hit on like one player to completely change your fortunes as a franchise, because if it's just Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler, you're like, okay, Walker's interesting, but Lauri's not good enough. This is you're going the other way. You're probably trading Lauri. You're probably trading Walker Kessler. Keontae George hits this year and looks like a legitimate star guard on the rise. Like when you're averaging nearly 25 points a game on over 60% true shooting, like you've got my attention as like a dead serious scoring guard in this league. And there's some really valuable metrics that have come out of that too. The Jazz have won a lot of big games against good teams this year. And when Lauri Markkanen and Keontae George are on the floor together, just those two, when they share the floor this year, they have a 120 offensive rating, which to me is like the hallmark of elite offense in the NBA. And so what I like is Danny Ainge looking at that and going like, screw it, let's go the other way. Let's go the other way and let's go all in on these guys and let's get weird and let's be. I think in a league too, where at the top of the league you've got these awesome teams that you're competing with. I think being weird is good. I think Denver was like this for years. Golden State was like this for years. It was like you ran into Denver in a playoff series and they just looked so different than any other team because of how Jokic plays, or the Warriors look so different than how everyone plays because of the way Steph plays. Right? Similarly, like. There's a version of this because Jaren Jackson can shoot, because Walker Kessler was 6 for 8 from 3 before he got hurt this year, and the release looked good. Like it didn't look like, Jared Vanderbilt shooting. It looked like a legitimate shooter. And then Lauri Markkanen can really shoot, and Keontae George can really shoot. There's a version of this where they're just massive and they can like run zone and they can tell Keontae and whoever's playing the two to just get up into the basketball, and who cares if you get beat? We have 3 7-footers behind you. Like This team just has the potential to be weird and fun, and at the same time, all these dudes have value. So if they get halfway into next season and they're like, oh, this guy doesn't fit, you move him, And so I just think it was a kind of a fun read of the room type of situation from Danny Ainge. He's like, I think I got something here with Keontae and Lauri. Why not go the other way? And I liked the move.
We already saw a version of this when they were starting Svi Mikhailuk and Kyle Filipowski at the beginning of the year, basically in those two spots. It's clearly an upgrade to go to Jaren Jackson Jr. over Filipowski. So there is reason to think it'll work. And I just wonder about long-term, is there enough creation there? All those guys are kind of like finishers. They finish the plays. Nobody really sets up the play, and so we'll see how it works. But to your point, it might just be the weirdness of them. Real quick hitters on these last ones, because I know we got to get out of here. But the Hornets got Kobe White for Colin Sexton effectively. I mean, I don't know there's other pieces of the trade, but that's basically it. I love this trade for my favorite team in the NBA right now, the Charlotte Hornets. They add a guy in Kobe White that I just feel like fits the personality, tempo, and skill set of that team. Makes a great offense a little bit better.
Yeah, another really skilled guard for a team that just has a ton of them. I think one of the big kind of like turning points for whether or not this trade works out will be Kobe White's pull-up three-point shooting. So 3 years ago, or I should say 2 years ago, he was just under 40% on pull-up threes. And then last year, he was like in the mid-30s. And then this year, he's been in the high 20s. He's just been kind of trending down in that direction. But like, it's a bet on if Kobe White is more like the pull-up shooter he was in recent seasons, then he kind of falls more into that Keontae George group of like pretty high-level scoring guards. So I think when you think about how expensive he was, which is not very expensive, and the potential upside there for a team that's doubling down on the strength. They're doubling down on their strength, which is we have a ton of guys that can dribble, shoot, and pass, and we're going to score 1 million points, and we'll figure out the rest. And I think also, too, when you start to think about how you got to pay everybody, like I think going after a discount option like this in the short term makes a lot of sense. And we'll see, because I mean, you're going to have to pay Moussa Diabate. You're going to have to pay the way that the contracts line up. You have a few years here before you have to really start paying everybody. So why not pay Kobe White for a couple years and see if you can't go make some noise in the East?
I think he'll work out and make it a more fun. And I could see him having a bounce back there just with the style. Like there's some teams, I think shooters need a team where every shot's okay. Everything's warranted. That's a team where it's like, yeah, let it fly, man. That's what they do. Get up the court and do it. So we'll see. Your Lakers got Luke Kennard here. They needed a shooter. They got one of the best in the league, albeit on lower volume. How much does this move the needle in your opinion?
It doesn't move the needle because I don't view them as a contender. But I liked the move because, one, you can't do nothing when you've got a 40-year-old LeBron. You got to do something. 41-year-old, I should say. Got to do something to try to help him. But at the same time, you have to maintain your flexibility for the summer. Now, the Lakers keep thinking they're going to get Giannis. And I'm not saying they're out of the Giannis race, but like I'm skeptical that they can pull that off. And you don't want to pull a Warriors or a Miami and put all your eggs in that basket and then get caught with your pants down. And now all of a sudden you got nothing to do. But them having 3 available first-round draft picks to trade on draft night plus up to $60 million in cap space this summer will make it very easy for them to make trades, because when they make trades, they don't have to worry about sending out salaries. So they can literally just go to a team and be like, here's a pick for your players. And so this summer is when they can make the 2 or 3 moves that bring in the foundational center and the guy who's going to start at small forward and all these little things that are going to build around Austin and Luka. But at the same time, you couldn't do nothing. So swapping an expiring salary for an expiring salary at a need, which is this Lakers team cannot shoot. They needed some guy that could come in and tie off these sequences where Luka or LeBron or Austin draw multiple defenders, and it's a wide open Jake LaRavia who can't shoot, or it's a wide open Jared Vanderbilt who can't shoot, or it's a wide open anybody on the roster named Rui's the only guy other than Austin who's like gonna knock down an open 3. And so adding a third guy into that mix, I think, gives the Lakers a better chance to pay off those sequences. So small upgrade in the short term, maintain your flexibility for the summer. I just thought it was a savvy little tiny move.
Well, there you go. The last one, I got 2 more for you real quick. The Warriors add Porzingis, on the other side of that deal. I don't really have thoughts about this one. It's hard for me to put thoughts to it. I think obviously everybody being healthy, it makes them better. It's another one where I just don't believe that's going to be the case. And does it make them better enough to really matter? I'd probably say no. But it is something.
He, when he's available and healthy, is a very good basketball player that could help the Warriors win games.
Fits their system, yeah.
Pretty much since the start of the playoffs in 2024, the vast majority of the time, this guy's been either completely unable to play because he's been hurt, or he's been a shell of himself when he's been on the floor. And so I was just disappointed because I wanted the Warriors to go for it with Steph. And it's very clear that they're not interested in spending any draft compensation to upgrade the roster. And so it looks like we're just going to watch Steph ride off into the sunset with a mediocre team. And that's pretty disappointing.
So I just don't have much more to say about it other than that. It could work. They could be the team that ends up like surprising somebody in a first round because they were healthy for 5 games. And it's like, damn, we got the only 5-game stretch where they looked good all year. And that's when we caught them. I mean, that's, I guess, what you're hoping for. But there's just no chance it's more than that.
And maybe Jimmy comes back next year and it all comes together. But like, if that was going to happen, next year, Steph turns 39 in March.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have a hard time believing they're going to suddenly start looking to go all in with these guys this summer.
Last team I want to talk about to get us out of here is the Phoenix Suns. And they didn't make anything crazy. They got Cole Anthony and Amir Coffey. Amir Coffey could be a depth piece that ends up having a bounce-back year. He was good a couple years back, shot the ball well. He's got great measurables. Like he could be a guy that could fit into, if you just look at the type of players that have excelled out there, he fits a mold of like maybe that could be, he fits into that culture. So I like it. But that's not why I like the move. They got below the tax line from second apron team to below the tax in 7 months, whatever it's been since the offseason began, and made their team better. That's so impressive, man. That is so impressive to be able to pivot down out of the worst spot to be in this new CBA to under the tax and be able to stand here today and say, yeah, you know what? We have a very fun team that surprises people, and we're probably not contenders, but they given their fan base something to hope for and to get excited about. I'm impressed that the Suns were able to do that. Even though we're just talking about these teams making salary dump moves, this is one where I tip my hat. Good job.
A pretty impressive couple of cycles from Brian Gregory to completely flip this franchise around. Cole Anthony, I think, is going to help, especially in the short term while Devin Booker's out. Like, one of the things that Cole Anthony can do at a pretty high level is beat people off the dribble and pass. And that was something that at various points this season has helped Milwaukee. And right now they just need that extra bit of ball handling. I mean, you saw it last night in the Warriors game. Like Dylan Brooks is very much a bruiser who likes to work from the mid range, and Colin Gillespie is a shooter. Get yourself a guy that can actually get some deep dribble penetration. That's why Grayson Allen's been so important to them, because he can keep beating people off the dribble. But
tough news there.
But yeah, I can't say enough about the job that they've done. It's, to me, like, it's a proof of concept that, like, it actually makes more sense to have balance, like have an elite shot creator, but then have balance off of them instead of having 3 elite shot creators in absolutely no depth of talent. It's just been a proof of concept that that's worked. Like they added a legitimate rim protector in Mark Williams and a pretty high level small forward who can guard multiple positions and score the basketball a little bit, completely changed the entire franchise. Like it's pretty remarkable, and hit on a veteran minimum guy like a Jordan Goodwin. Like just a handful of little things completely turned a team around.
Cue that outro music there, Emma. I will say this about the Phoenix Suns. They are proof of my core belief about this NBA that you can rise and fall really, really quickly. And I think people know you can fall quickly, but the rising part is interesting because there's so much talent on the margins. I think it's hard to get to contender status. It's almost harder to go from the middle to contender than it is from going from awful, hopeless, nothing looks good to what the Suns are, because you have to build culture, which they have done, and you just have to find guys on the margins, which there's more guys there to be mined if you have a culture in place. They've done it. They're a success story. They are the 7 seed. You know, we'll see if they can hold on to that or climb even a little bit, but great story, and they got below the tax, which I'm just impressed with. All right, that is Jason Timpf. You can find him over on The Volume. You said you had 8 trade deadline videos you can go check out?
Yeah, we just went after every big deal. So it was like every morning and every afternoon on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
All right, we'll take a little vacation. Will you? Try to take some time off here. I am going to be back with Mark Stein. It looks like it might be Sunday that I'm back with him. So we will have some kind of wrap up just hearing what people were saying around the league. You can check out our earlier shows this week, both with Mark Stein and with Tim Legler. And we're going to be back again next week, of course. Make sure you're subscribed. Hit the like button on the way out.